Grandpa?
Yeah, Simon?
You've got a lot going on here. I hope it isn't too much for you.
It's just work, Simon. It's nothing to worry about.
Well, I know what a big flocking deal this is to you. Mama told me how long you've been working on all this stuff, and I don't want you to feel bad if you fail. And the bigger it gets, the more likely it is that it will. I want to keep my happy, Grandpa.
You will, Simon. This just happened to be what I was faced with in life. Yeah, it's big. And yeah, I'm scared. But I decided I didn't want to feel powerless anymore. So even if the followership zone doesn't work, I'll still be happy. You see, Simon, once we decide to let go of our powerless, we can let our scared take us to places that we never dreamed were possible. And just making that decision makes it a lot easier for us to help other people do the same flocking thing.
That's really what this huge flocking mess is all about, isn't it, Grandpa? Too many people feeling powerless and hoping that politics will fix it for them, so they don't have to figure out how to be powerful together.
Yeah, it is, Simon.
Uh-oh, trailer alert.
Coming this fall to the followership zone.
Hey, this
Simon
doesn't
and
look
Grandpa
too
hit
bad.
the road together in search of real flocking meaning in the
Cute
U.S.
kid.
economy. Be amazed as they boldly navigate
too.
change at the
Yeesh.
beach. Thrill to their fearless but ultimately unsuccessful attempts to drive culture in a city that only sleeps at night. Then, watch in spellbound wonder as they raise their uplifting search for business transformation to a higher flocking place. In a Sedona vortex, at a sweat lodge on the Colorado mountains, and then to a couple of towns nearby before their
Loser.
budget runs out, and they have to finish the series with a little group yoga in the employee lunchroom back at the office.
Ouch.
The Followership Zone presents Simon and Grandpa Save the Flocking World. Coming to a painful seminar near you.
The followership agreements that provided the labor productivity of the 20th century have died. The social capital that they created were what governed how we shared purpose, quality, and accountability in commerce. They were the engines of rising economic growth and labor productivity during the first 75 years of the 20th century. Today, the death of those agreements is obvious. Many members of society are deeply frustrated and don't feel included in our economy. Wealth and income disparity continue to reduce the notion of a rising middle class to a historical footnote of the previous century. Any economist will tell us that rising labor productivity creates a rising middle class. What they can't seem to tell us is why, when, or how this will happen. The answer is contained in the 125-year followership cycle where first, technology follows technology, then people follow technology, and then people follow people. Rising labor productivity happens when people follow people. After any new infrastructure is built, new process technologies like artificial intelligence must also be deployed to make the best use of it. However, alongside those processes, the needs of people dictate that we build a system of rising social capital to account for technology's isolating effects. As an example, take modern assembly line processes in the early 20th century. The idea of love and belonging began to permeate churches, homes, workplaces, and marriages. Emotional security became a socio-economic requirement as our institutions began to make it a priority in the means that they use to govern, manage labor, create brands, and define social priorities. Today, while cloud technologies increase the speed at which labor can perform tasks, there are similar productivity dangers. People are less connected by function, time, or space than at any other point in history. And followership agreements based on 20th century social capital are now completely inadequate for the productivity needs of people in a world where we can't even see one another. Luckily, we are very close to a new period of rising labor productivity that will dwarf its 20th century counterpart. And because relatively few leaders will build the followership agreements of the 21st century, the social capital that they create will devour the financial capital of the businesses of those that ignore it. The history of followership proves that the needs of people will prevail. The followership cycle begins when technology follows technology. Between 1850 and 1875, Rockefeller's oil and Carnegie Steel raced to build new infrastructure just as vigorously as Gates Software and Jobs Hardware did between 1975 and 2000. And the social and economic effects were identical. Expensive new technologies drove economic growth. Both periods were followed by a 25-year stretch when economic growth was fueled by people following technology. Between 1875 and 1900, mass migration of labor to cities created successes like Henry Ford's auto factories in Detroit. But the Gilded Age had its dark side. People were reluctant to let go of the social capital of the previous followership cycle. For example, children worked alongside their parents in factories, a practice that came from the followership agreement of their previous agrarian lives. Similarly, starting around 2000, people followed technology through global labor and material sourcing. No longer limited by time and space, technology can pursue all the inputs of business, people, material, and information without regard to geography. But just as before, this second Gilded Age reveals our inability to let go of the social capital of our past. This prevents us from building the followership agreements that will help us make progress toward the better future we all deserve. Because as alluring as it is, technology alone dehumanizes us. The reality today is that a leadership call for people to follow technology to the internet is no more profoundly innovative than the call 125 years earlier for people to move to Detroit. Whether it was Ford's assembly lines, today's cloud technologies, or tomorrow's artificial intelligence, labor process innovations demand rising forms of social capital in order for labor productivity to lead economic growth. People must follow people again. And the payoff is big. The 125-year followership cycle in which technology follows technology, then people follow technology, and then people follow people will produce a 75-year arc of labor productivity far greater than the first 75 years of the 20th century. But quite the reverse of the 20th century when financial capital owns social capital. 21st century social capital will dominate and indeed devour financial capital. Barack Obama recently referred to this social capital as the leverage that all members of our society need to create economic mobility in the future. We're going to have to redesign the social compact in some fairly fundamental ways over the next 20 years. He also stated that although it can help create more of a runway for economic growth, government cannot create the flight path itself towards a cohesive society in which productivity and wealth generation are not automatically linked to how many hours you put in. Designing the flight path for that economic jet is something that our socioeconomic entrepreneurs will accomplish by building the followership agreements of the 21st century. And it's a good thing, because there are a lot of people waiting to fly.